This is the Trek Rail 2025. Today I'm going to be doing a quick bike check. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at the front of the bike and work my way back. Just talk about the parts that I've put on the bike and just my general thoughts on the bike, having owned it for a few months. Starting with the front tyre, as you can see I've got a Schwalbe Albert in the Gravity Pro casing, and I've got it in the Ultra Soft compound, and it's a 29er 2.6. I've gone for the 2.6 because I find these radial tyres are a little bit smaller when they're compared to traditional tyres. So think of a Maxxis 2.5. This is more what a 2.6 in the radial is like. I've run a couple of tyres on this bike now, but I've settled on these for the summer. They work out pretty well. They're very similar to a Maxxis Assegai, if you want a sort of comparison for them, although I do find they are a bit better in terms of grip. Moving on to the wheel, so I've got a set of Crank Brothers Synthesis e-bike wheels, and the front wheel is a 28 spoke count, and it's attached to Crank Brothers' own hub, and I'm using a set of torque caps for the end caps. Attached to the rim I've got a TyreWiz 2, so this is a pressure monitor. Now obviously you don't need one of these, but I find them incredibly helpful. So instead of having to get out a pressure gauge before you go on a ride to check whether your tyres are correct, you just have to spin the wheel. If the LED flashes green, it's still within the range that you've set and you're good to go. Also, when you're out on a ride, you know, sometimes you'll think, is my tyre going flat? Is it not going flat? Or again, you just look at the LED. If it's flashing green, you're still in the range that you've set. Or if it's flashing red, you've lost some air. Moving on to the brakes, as you can see, I've got a set of Hope V4s. I've got a 220mm rotor at the front, and it's the vented floating rotor. It looks like two rotors sandwiched together. The only issue with this rotor is that you have to make sure you get the caliper aligned correctly and that you've got a straight rotor, because there isn't much clearance and you can get a bit of brake rub on these if you don't get them set up right. As for pads, I'm running a set of Trick Stuff power pads. I believe it's Power Plus, but they're the silver ones anyway. I've tried various different pads, I'm just experimenting with them. And here's the Tech 4 lever for the V4s. I actually really like these. The lever blade fits my hand, well, my finger really well. But I know some people find them a little bit too straight, a little bit too long. It'd be nice if Hope did some alternatives. Moving on to the fork, I've got a set of RockShox Zeb Ultimates, and this is the 3.1 damper. It's got the electric red lowers. As you can see, I've customized the decal. The decals came from Invisiframe, if anybody wants a similar sort of one. I just don't like the white decal that comes on the stock. I've got them set at 180mm. I've tried this bike. It's a 160, a 170 and now a 180, and for me it works best with the 180 for the type of riding that I do, but obviously that's going to depend on where you're riding and how you like your bike set up. I have the RRP bolt-on Mudguard on the front. This is the mini version. I run this pretty much year round. Onto the handlebars, so I've got a set of Renthal Fat Bar 35 bars, and these are the newer ones. I've got them with a 70mm rise. I've tried this bike with a 50, a 60, but I've settled on 70 for my preferred feel to get the stack the way I want it. And these are 820mm uncut. I normally run an 800, but I tried the 820 and I actually prefer it. The only downside is obviously you're going to have clearance issues if you're riding anywhere that's got tight trees. So your pinkies may be getting sacrificed, but so far it's been all right. And then I've got 30mm of spacers underneath the stem. I've got a Frazen 35 stem, and this has got a 7.5mm rise. Onto the grips, I've got a set of ODI Vanquish grips. These are my favourite grips. I've done a previous video on them if you're interested. They are available in new colours as well if you weren't happy with the previous colours that they had out. Onto the shifter, so I've got a SRAM pod rocker controller, and this is mounted directly to my Hope V4s. In the steerer tube, I've got a 1UP Components EDC light tool. I prefer this over the threaded or threadless version because you can get straight to the tool. It's also much easier to fit. I'm using a Hope dropper lever, and this is mounted directly to the Tech 4 lever. As you can see, I've got a Bosch mini remote. It's got a little silicone cover on it. Using the Bosch system controller still. Now obviously you've got the Kiox 400C that's coming out, which is the display which mounts flush into the top tube. It's a bit of a pain for people that have bought a bike and end up with this blanking plate and a system controller that you can't do anything with. But hopefully going forward, newer bikes should come with the screen fitted as standard. Moving further down the bike, as you can see, I've customized the logos. I've just got them blacked out with some black decals that I got from Invisiframe. So this is on the side of the bike, and then the top. as well as I got a black head tube badge from Trek. I just thought it looked better when it was all blacked out. Moving further down, I've got the Fidlock bottle mount onto the saddle. So I've got an Ergon SME Mountain Core Prime. I've just put this on recently. It's been pretty comfortable so far. Then I've got an Anomaly switch grade, and I've got this set up with the 2 positions. So I've got it with the neutral, and then you pull the lever and it will go into the climb. I found I wasn't using the 3rd setting, so I've got it set like this because I find it much simpler and easier to use. Onto the dropper post, I've got a 1UP Components V3. This is a 240mm drop, and I've got it slammed into the frame. On the top tube accessory mount, I've got a 1UP Components EDC pump, and I've got this in the 70cc version. I also carry a spare CO2 cartridge in the top of this. I wish it was moved slightly forward, because when you actually want to pick the bike up, you really want to pick it up from around here. So it'd be nice if they moved it just slightly forward, which would be much better, but obviously you're going to have issues with the water bottle clearance. So I suppose things are pretty tight, so I'm just being nitpicky here. Moving down to the shocks, so I've got a RockShox Vivid coil. I've experimented with the air shock on this bike and then the coil shock. I much prefer the coil, although the air shock does make the bike feel a little bit more lively if you're looking for that. I've got the lower setting set to the progressive setting, so the more setting for the coil. I've tried it in both. I prefer it in the slightly more progressive. Just allows, with the linearness of the coil, to be able to ramp up a little bit better. Onto the Mino Link, so I've got it set in the high position. I've tried it in both high and low on various different terrain. In terms of the best compromise, I found that the high setting works best for this. It helps bring the bottom bracket up a little bit, and it just makes the bike feel slightly more balanced. You do sacrifice a little bit on the descending, but I think the overall this works best. It's got the stock Trek fender on the back. I found this pretty decent. It does do a pretty good job of keeping the mud out. One issue though is you can get stones trapped down the side, but I mean that's always going to happen. But overall it's pretty good, and I'm glad that it comes with the bike. So I'm running the stock E13 chain guide. I'm running a 36 tooth steel chainring. I'm running some Hope e-bike cranks, and these are 155mm in length. I've got a set of Wraith's Face little crank boots on the end. So I'm running a set of Hope Union gravity pedals. These are the ones with the slightly wider platform. One thing I'd say is when you first get the bike, make sure that this main pivot bolt, which is hidden behind the chain guide, is actually tight. And what I'd recommend is putting a little bit of Loctite on it, because what tends to happen is it tends to come loose and the whole back end will start rattling. Now when you're actually out riding, it's a pain because you've got to take this whole chain guide off to be able to get to the bolt to tighten it up. So what I found, a little bit of Loctite has stopped it from coming loose. Just wanted to make a quick note on the battery. So stock this comes with the PowerTube 800. Now I would say this is the bare minimum for the type of riding that I like to do. I'm not quite sure how some reviewers are saying you can get away with a 600. I mean, obviously people ride in different places and they ride their bikes differently to each other. But for me, the 800 is literally the bare minimum. I literally just get round the rides that I'm doing. So I'm probably going to have to get a spare battery for this. The only problem is you can't get hold of these lower covers at the moment. So I'm probably going to try the range extender just to see how that goes, see if it affects the handling of the bike. Onto the drivetrain. So I've got a SRAM transmission AXS setup, and I've got the XO version. So I've got an XO cassette, XO black chain, XO derailleur, and I'm sure you've noticed I've got an aftermarket cage fitted to this. So I've bent a number of cages on this setup, and I've decided that I'm going to try something different. So I ended up buying this one from a company called Ratio. They're based in the Lake District in the UK. And the main reason I wanted to go for it is because the stock cage is incredibly flimsy, and it's also prone to catching sticks and rocks, particularly sticks, where they will come into this lower section, get sucked up under the jockey wheel or the pulley, and then they'll actually bend the cage because this cage tends to flare out. So on this Ratio one, they've added a little bit of bracing on the back here using a bolt, which holds the cage in to make it a bit firmer. They've also rounded this lower section here, which helps deflect rocks and sticks. And so far it's been a big improvement on the stock one. You can buy this as just a cage, or you can buy it with the jockey wheels. The derailleur is wired directly into the main Bosch battery using this cable here, so you don't have to charge a separate battery up. The rear brake is a Hope V4 again, and it's with a 220mm rotor again. Onto the rear tyre, again I'm running a Schwalbe Albert Gravity Pro. This time I'm running the soft compound, again it's a 2.6. Onto the rear wheel, again I'm running a Crank Brothers Synthesis e-bike wheel. This one has 32 spokes on the back, and again it's using Crank Brothers' own hubs. This is their new 36 tooth ratchet system, so it's basically a copy of a DT Swiss. You can upgrade it to a 54 tooth if you want, although I actually prefer a low engagement hub on an e-bike. I find it helps with the chain slap that you can get. It's a 27.5. For anyone that's interested, you cannot get a 29er into this frame. There just isn't enough clearance. I mean, you can technically get it in, but you're going to have no clearance at all once you put a decent tyre on it. That was a bike check on the Trek Rail 2025. If you've got any comments or questions, please feel free to leave them in the box below. And thanks for watching.